Hello everybody and welcome to Tiger Tales, a place where you'll find stories and fanfictions written and read to you by your host, me, Tai Tiger. Today we're diving back into Albedo 10,000, kind of a what-if storyline. What if Ben died by the hands of Vilgax, and several years thrown into the future, Albedo gets requested to put on the Omnitrix and work with the plumbers to not only save Earth, but the universe. We last left off with him meeting his new plumber team, got given the Omnitrix, and about to start a rescue mission. That being said, let's dive in with Albedo 10,000. Chapter 2. Rescue Mission. Albedo and his new squad were crouched down and leant against the wall of the Forever Knight's castle. "Never liked these tin cans," Albedo muttered. They were allies for the last few years, but one of the generals went and kidnapped some villagers from Undertown, Roots told him. "Why is this place so quiet?" Albedo asked. "Forever Knights usually are off either in council meetings or trying to negotiate with alien refugees," Daisy told them. "Daisy, right?" Albedo asked. "Correct," Daisy said bluntly. "Why are you the only one who isn't using a fake name?" Albedo asked her. "What makes you think I ain't using a fake name?" Daisy responded. "Well, first off, your ears are pierced with daisies, and you are truly telling me that you want me to believe that pointy one of theirs called Shards?" "Really?" Albedo asked slyly. "Fair point. They are given nicknames, so Vilgax or anyone like yourself don't use them against them, and, of course, hiding," Daisy told them. "Wait a minute. Me? Fair point, but Vilgax?" Albedo asked, confused. "Haven't you heard? Vilgax owns half the universe, whether that's controlling it or completely wiping off the map. So they use fake names so they don't get, interrogated," Daisy told him. "Can you two shut up?" Blizz snapped. "Sorry, Blizz, what's the plan?" Daisy asked. "I'll scout ahead," Blizz muttered. Then he got up and advanced forward towards the main gate, suddenly becoming intangible. He then faced through the gate and walked into the main courtyard. Then suddenly a knight walked up to him. He spotted the blue hue outline of Blizz and instantly drew his sword. Then Blizz jumped forward, facing through the knight, and ice formed around him, freezing him into a solid block of ice. "Stay cool," Blizz muttered. Then he advanced down a corridor. One wall was only slightly built, with thick rods going from the small wall up to the roof. He could glide through the corridor, and he kept an eye out for other knights and keeping an eye out on the main door as well. The courtyard was relatively big, so he had to keep an eye out and keep turning his head from left to right. He finally found a pillar with a set of stairs spinning up to the roof. He jumped up and flew through the steps as he landed into the room, and that's where he found the gate's control panel. He pressed a few buttons and the big gate opened. The rest of the squad crept in. Blizz jumped out of the pillar and landed next to his team, becoming physical once more. "Nicely done," Shards nodded. "Yeah, good job," Daisy cheered quietly. The team all then kept their heads down and ran for the main door to the castle. They opened it, and suddenly Shards and Roots were smacked by a brute of a knight who wielded a massive red laser mace. Shards and Roots flew back, crashing down onto the courtroom concrete slabs. "Ow," Shards muttered. The rest of the group all jumped up and regrouped with the two fallen teammates. "You two better get on your feet," Albedo grunted as he activated the Omnitrix, and the wheel spun and stopped and the panel slid back, and Albedo slammed on the watch, and in a flash of red light Albedo transcended into Forearms. "Oh yeah, let's pack a punch 4 times over," Forearms yelled as he ran at the knight. Then he, as a swung of his two left fists, he smacked the knight in the face. The hulking figure stumbled back, but recovered quick. As he swung the mace, it clobbered Forearms in the head, and he tumbled to one side. Daisy ran up with a small spellbook in hand. She started mumbling some magic words no one else understood. Then suddenly mystical bandages materialized and wrapped around the knight's knight's arm, but the knight pulled his arm free from the mystical bandages, snapping them, and they disappeared. He pulled his arm out from their grasp, and then shards got up, and his hands became several pointy crystal blades as he aimed his arms and fired several multiple little shards at the knight. The knight held his free arm out, and a red holographic-like shield appeared and deflected the crystal shards. Then Bounce came running up, rolled up into our ball form, and rolled right into the knight at full speed, and collided with it, making him fall off its feet. Then Blizz flew up, his cloak flapping open into his wings. He took a deep breath in and exhaled a blast of blue frosty mist, which hit the knight and froze him to the floor. Forearm stood up and transformed back into Albedo. "Well done," Albedo muttered. "You're just in a mood because you ain't needed here," Bounce growled as she unrolled herself and she had to catch her heavy breath. "Azimuth wants me here, so I'm here," Albedo retorted. Then suddenly the knight flexed and broke the ice and started climbing to his feet. Roots then held up his hands and fireballs exploded to life in both his palms, and he threw both of them at the knight. Both fireballs collided into his shield. "We're wasting time here. We need to find the prisoners," Shards barked. "So what do you suggest?" Daisy asked as she made a stone slab float off the ground and fly at the knight. The knight flicked his wrists and the mace swung in a circle, smashing the concrete slab into multiple tiny pieces. "You take Albedo and find the prisoners. Get them into the forest so we can get out of here, and lead them to the drop point," Shards demanded. Daisy nodded, then started running towards the gate. Albedo sighed and started running after. They both ran past the knight, who tried to attack them but was bombarded by fireballs and crystal shards and was stumbled back. Daisy and Albedo dived into the castle and started running through the dark, tall, grey, gloomy hallways. "Didn't Dagon get defeated by Ben and his posse anyway?" Albedo asked. "Yes, but the knights were branded after Ben was killed by Vilgax. Now, silence, or we'll be running through this castle all night," Daisy barked as her book started floating in front of her. She started mumbling, still running through the hallway, and her eyes turned purple. For a moment, then the colour faded. She grabbed her book with one hand and her head with the other, and she winced in pain. "I know where they are," Daisy told them through gritted teeth. "Lead the way," Albedo nodded. He wasn't going to start arguing with the sorceress. They walked down into a set of stone steps and barged through a set of double doors to find a group of Kraho all chained to the wall. Daisy and Albedo suddenly realized how cold the room was. Each prisoner looked ill and very cold. Opposing the prisoners were 3 knights, who pulled out their laser lances and took aim. Albedo quickly chose an alien and slammed his hand down on his omnitrix, and in a flash of red he transformed into Big Chill. He then flew at the 3 knights. He grabbed one and flew straight up, becoming intangible, floating through the ceiling, but the knight, however, just crashed into the stone ceiling and dropped to the floor unconscious. Big Chill then flew out of the ceiling and landed next to the other one, and breathed as hard as he could, freezing the knight's feet to the floor, then became visible once again and punched the knight in the head, knocking him out. Daisy ran up to the 3rd knight muttering a spell, then a small pink tornado formed under the knight, which lifted the knight off the ground, spun him around and flung him across the room, making him crash into the wall. Daisy then ran over to the prisoners, waved her hand, and all the handcuffs burst open, releasing the Kraho. They all rejoiced and started hugging each other. "You need to get them out of here," Daisy told Big Chill. Big Chill transformed back into Albedo. "Azimuth says mass control, but not all of it. I still have to deal with the whole wretched human form going back and forth nonsense," Albedo muttered as he chose his next alien, slammed down on the Omnitrix. In a flash of red, he transformed into Jet Ray. "Hold on tight," Jet Ray told the Kraho. As he grabbed one and flew off, he blasted a hole into the ceiling with his laser beams bursting from his eyes. He then flew out of the castle and flew the Kraho prisoner into the forest. He then flew back at full speed and collected the next Kraho prisoner, and repeated this action over and over again until all the prisoners were in the forest, away from the castle. He then flew through the hallways and overhead of Daisy, who had started making her way back to the courtyard. Shards turned both his hands into big single blade-like crystals and ran at the knight. He jumped onto the shield and swiped his blade hands at the knight's head, sparks ripping off the contact between crystal and metal. Roots threw a few seeds and they sank into the concrete, and vines exploding out of the ground and wrapped around the knight's arm, pulling it down to his knees. Bounce rolled up and smacked into the knight. Blizz then froze the knight's feet to the ground once more. The knight, now on its knees, trying to pull the mace arm free, started swinging his free hand around in a panic. Then Bounce jumped up and rolled back into a ball, came hammering down on the knight, crushing him into the ground, the concrete cracking underneath his weight. Root then made more vines erupt from the ground and entangled the fallen knight. "And stay down," Root muttered. Blizz landed and froze the vines, encasing the knight into a block of ice. "Double down," Blizz grinned. Then they saw Jetray and Daisy barging through the door. Jetray landed and transformed into Albedo. "Everyone is safe and waiting," Daisy told the four aliens. "Good. We better get out of here," Bounce grunted. "Agreed," Shards replied. They all ran out of the castle threshold and dived back into the forest, kicking up the snow as they ran. They met up with the Kraho and led them into the drop point where the plumber's ship has just started to land. They all started climbing into the ship when suddenly a couple more Forever Knights popped up and started shooting at the ship. Albedo jumped forward and picked an alien and slammed his hand on the Omnitrix, and in a flash of red he transformed into Heat Blast. He then held out both hands and blasted at one of the knights with a fire blast, knocking him onto his feet. Then he did it to the second one. The third one rolled forward and took aim once again, but Heat Blast threw a fireball and it collided into the knight as he got onto one knee and was knocked down onto the floor. The fourth knight then jumped up out of the bush, pulled out his sword and ran at Heat Blast. The ship started taking off. "Come on!" Shards called out from the ship as he started getting higher off the ground. Heat Blast blocked the incoming attack and then swung his hot fiery fist into the knight, making him stumble back. He then aimed both hands down and at the ground, and two streams of fire blasted from his palms, hitting the ground, blasting Heat Blast into the air. He then flew into the open door of the ship, transforming back into Albedo as he crashed on the floor. "Ow," Albedo muttered. "Thanks for covering for us," Daisy said to him as he climbed to his feet. "No problem. It was easy," Albedo grinned. "Don't get cocky," Roots grunted. "I'm sorry. Do you want to go a few rounds? 'Cause I believe I gave us the advantage here," Albedo sneered, holding up the Omnitrix. "You should not be wearing that, and you know it," Roots growled. "And I believe Azimuth might disagree," Albedo grinned. "Oh, I'm gonna so kick your ass now," Roots barked, and a fireball roared to life in his palm. The rescued prisoners all gasped in shock and terror. Blizz then jumped between Roots and Albedo and faced Roots. "Pack it in. He ain't worth it," Blizz muttered. "Fine." Roots sighed and relinquished his fireball. Albedo sat by himself and with a wicked grin on his face. They all headed back to the plumber's base in silence. And there we have it, guys. Chapter 2 of Albedo 10,000. I'm slowly building this story up and I'm really enjoying the whole concept of what if Ben is no longer around and never grew up to be Ben 10,000. Albedo is now roughly in his mid-20s in human years, but still looks like 16-year-old Ben, so it's quite a lot of fun to write this sort of premise. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like the video and subscribe if you're new, because that would mean a lot. Don't forget to check out the Three Ranger Bros Studios, which are my partners in crime. We have Mark the Red Cornish Ranger with his podcast, Nerd Through Comics, and of course my Parabatai, Willie, with his podcast, Storytime with Cosplay Dude 637. And we're in association with Zero to Hero, which is a podcast where Billy and Jim, the Balkan Sky Podcasting, talk about a lot of different fandoms, Power Rangers, Gundam, anime and the lot, and they also interview people as well, so maybe you should go check it out. With that being said, like I mentioned just now, don't forget to subscribe, and I shall see you guys really soon.